Hello, I'm Susan. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and you are watching Mad Knitting. This is my YouTube channel where I talk about my love of knitting and yarn and all the things that go with that. It's an integral part of my life. It's my favorite hobby, and I sort of think about it in relation to all kinds of stuff in my life and the world in general. And I like to talk about it on the internet, so here we are. You can find me online as madtownmama on Ravelry and Bluesky, and madtown_mama on Instagram. I'm pretty active in all those places, for better or for worse. I think, boy, online spaces are just an interesting place to be. Like, I learn a lot, I really do. Bluesky is a very political place. I have to be very careful that I'm not just sucked into doom scrolling there. It does happen, but I learn a lot. Like, there are interesting, thoughtful people that I follow there, and I learn a lot there about how to figure out what's going on in the world. Instagram is just sort of a hot mess of everything, and Ravelry, of course, is all like knitting and fiber art stuff for the most part. It is early October 2025, and if you're watching this around that time, you'll know that we're just in some really, really wackadoodle times. I probably say that every episode, and it's true. So it's just a lot of effort to sort of keep going, stay regulated. Some of the best advice I've seen is related to like pacing your outrage, finding joy, and all of that stuff. And that is what I am trying to do in these times. So today is a little bit of an abnormal episode in that I have a couple of finished socks to share with you. And then instead of talking through some works in progress, I am going to have a big old frogging party. I have a whole pile of projects that are just not working for one reason or another. I've shared about all of them at one point or another in the last several months on this channel, but I was inspired to just take the bull by the horns and face the facts and rip them out. If we can mix a whole bunch of idioms and metaphors here. So I will be talking about those, and then we'll be on our merry way. So I'm not wearing anything knitted at this moment, but all day, I'll just share with you that all day up until it got a little too warm in the late afternoon, I've been wearing my community cardie, which is a design by Alicia Plummer, and I love this sweater, and I was very glad that sweater weather has finally arrived, at least for the early part of the day. We're hitting like mid-60s Fahrenheit by the afternoon, so then it's a little warm if I'm like in the sun, but it was very cozy on my bike ride to work this morning. In fact, I wish that I had worn gloves, but I didn't. Anyway, I made this out of wool that I bought in New Zealand when we took a family trip there in spring of 2024. So this is very special to me. I love this sweater. I used just about every last bit of the yarn. In fact, the pockets lining, I used a different wool just because I was afraid I was going to run out. So yes, I wore my community cardie all day, and I'm very pleased with that. I'll probably put it on later when it cools down this evening. So I have two finished sock projects to share with you. You saw the start of both of these if you watched my last episode. So the first is this pair of self-striping socks, the striped socks. This first pair of striped socks is using self-striping yarn. It is Knitpicks Felici. It's in the color Rustic Cabin, I think. And I bought it off of someone's D-stash. I don't think you can get Felici anymore, or maybe they did away with it and then brought it back. I don't know. I don't shop at Knitpicks anymore because they were bought out by private equity, and that just gives me the ick, and I'd rather not spend my money there. I also understand they're having more quality control issues, and that was certainly true in these socks, even though this yarn is probably a couple of years old by now. So I cast on 72 stitches on a size 1 needle, which gives me a sock that will probably fit like around a men's size 9. The women's equivalent would be, I guess, like a 10 or 11. So they're a little big on me, and I did have a recipient in mind for these. So for that reason, I tried to have the stripes start at the same point so that the socks would be more almost identical, more alike than I usually care. Like usually for self-striping, I don't really care if the second sock matches the first. But I was planning to give these away, so I wanted them to match. However, I don't know if you can tell in this light, but the skein of yarn I used on the second sock is not quite as saturated as the skein in the first sock. I have read that this happens with Knitpicks Felici yarn, that they have some quality control issues, like I mentioned. And there are people on like the forums on Ravelry where they will post pictures of like even 2 skeins side by side, and you can just tell there's a big difference. Like they just didn't get the dye to saturate in all of the skeins the same way. In this sock, it shows up in the 2 darkest colors. So this brown color and then this reddish, sort of orange reddish color. The rest, I don't notice it really at all, but you can just see there's kind of pale spots that don't necessarily look bad on their own, but when you put it next to the sock where the stripes are a very solid color, it's not quite the same. So I don't know if this is noticeable enough to make these inappropriate for a gift. If my husband would wear hand knit socks, I wouldn't hesitate to give these to him because I don't think he would even notice the dye differences, but he doesn't really like to wear hand knit socks, so I'm not making them for him. So the recipient on these is yet to be determined. And I don't have them with me, but I am on my very last set of Felici yarn. I'm kind of ready to be done with that. I've knit probably 20 pairs of Felici socks, or 25. I don't know, a lot, like in the course of my life. And it's fun. I like the self-striping aspect. It's an affordable way to do it, but I'm kind of ready to move on to other things. Speaking of Knitpicks yarn, I finished this pair of Tweedy socks, also meant as a gift. And there weren't the same quality control issues or color discrepancies, so I think these will be just fine. These are also meant to fit a foot a little bigger than mine, like maybe more like a woman's size 9 or so. I cast on 70 stitches for these on a size 1 needle, and they're both the same, so I'll just show one close up. I improvise this design. I always knit from cuff to toe, and I was getting a little tired of the same old stockinette leg situation. So I decided to make the entire leg ribbed, so it's 1 by 1 ribbing the entire way. And then on the sides, once you get past the cuff part, I improvised a little bit of a cable pattern. So it's mirrored, you know, they cross one way on this side, that's the top of the foot, and the other way on the front of the cuff, and this way on the back of the cuff. I think it looks pretty nice. So that pattern continues down the top of the foot until you get to the toe. The bottom of the foot is just stockinette stitch. But what I like about that 1 by 1 rib, I think it's a very classic look, and it also is nice and stretchy, so it will hug your ankle and hug the top of your foot, so it won't be like too loose or baggy. By casting on 70 stitches, that's a number divisible by 2, but not divisible by 4, which means that when you're working on half the stitches for the heel, I had an odd number, which made it perfect for doing a symmetrical slip stitch pattern, and I could continue the columns of knit stitches down the back of the heel. So if you have an even number of stitches on on the heel, it just means you're gonna you can't have it totally symmetrical. It just doesn't work. So that is very satisfying to me. I have intentions of writing this up into a pattern and maybe selling it as a benefit of some kind, but I'm a little bit ways off from that, so I don't think I'll say anything more about that now. And I had erroneously said in my last episode that while I have made several pairs of socks out of this Stroll Tweed yarn from Knitpicks, that I hadn't kept any. That was not true. I have a pair that I'm not going to show you because I wore them yesterday, so they're in the wash. But they're like bright blue for the foot, and then I striped in like some white and gray for the cuff and some white for the toe. So I like those. I've only worn them a few times because I finished them last spring, so jury's still out on how well they will wear and how quickly they'll start to pill. But they're very comfortable. So let's get to the frogging party. This was inspired by a very low-key Instagram photo challenge hosted by Urban Farm Wife. Her name is Amy. She lives in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And she posted, or she's got one prompt a week for the entire month of September and October. You're supposed to post, that's a tongue twister, on Mondays. I just try to get my post in sometime during the week. But it's all about the hashtag 2025 finish along, or maybe it's finish along 2025. I don't remember which it is, but I'll make sure it goes on the bottom of the screen so you can check it out if you want. And the prompt for this week was rip or whip, meaning like, is this a work in progress or is this something you're just gonna rip? And I got to thinking about it and realized that I have quite a pile of stuff that I have been kind of in denial about, like thinking, oh, I need to rip that out, or maybe I'll finish it, I just don't know. And it actually, like, I don't really have a problem ripping out projects that don't work. Like, it's not an emotionally difficult thing. I don't get upset about it usually, but for whatever reason, I've just been putting this off. And now seems like a good time to just do it. So these are all projects that I've talked about. So, you know, if you're a longtime watcher with a good memory, this may be familiar. So the first thing that's just not working is this. I think it's called Nila. It's by Natasha Hornby, who is a Dutch designer. I still want to make this someday. It is a gorgeous pattern. It's got this beautiful lace cable detail going down the front, very simple texture pattern with this like low-key cable pattern going down the back. As you can see, you knit it top down, so you start with, I think you start with the back and get down to a certain point, and then you pick up stitches on the shoulders and do the front and all that. Well, my problem is that the row gauge I was getting was quite a bit different on the front than from the back. And that's a problem because they need to be the same, or at least very, very close, so you don't get weird pulling once you join in the round to do the whole body of the sweater. Yes, I could have tried to do it in separate pieces and sewed it up, but I just didn't want to deal with that. I did soak and block it just to see if it would like relax somehow and the fabric would match from the front to the back, and that didn't happen at all. It stayed exactly the same. So at least I know with this yarn that it's not going to change when I block it. But I think I just need to pick a different yarn to make this pattern. The yarn I'm using, by the way, and you're going to see it in 2 more projects here because I've got 3 attempts that are going to get ripped. I don't have the tag, but it's Juniper Moon Farm Zooey. It's a cotton linen blend. I think it's about half and half, or like a 52-48 split. So it's about half one and half the other. It's got a little bit of thick and thin going on. I don't know if you can tell. And I think it's because like the way it's plied together, sometimes the fiber, like here's a spot where it's sort of thicker. I wonder if that's the cotton. So there's a little bit of a texture happening when you knit it up, which surprisingly didn't get in the way of the patterning on this design, but I just have to scrap it because of the row gauge. So that was attempt number 1. Now, given the difficulty with row gauge and a stitch pattern kind of potentially messing with that, and given that the yarn has a texture, I thought, okay, next attempt, I'll make like a plain t-shirt and let the yarn kind of speak for itself. So I started this one. This is called Cocoa Tea. It's by Sari Nordland. It's again a top down where you actually cast on in the round and do a bunch of short rows to shape the neck and some very aggressive increases for the shoulder. And as you can see, I got fairly far on it. Like I had done the front, done the back, joined under the arms. And at some point, I think I tried it on to make sure the fit was okay. And the back of the neck had, you probably can't tell from looking at this, but it had this weird bubble. Like the back of the neck just, it's like a little too tall or something. And there's a weird bubble that sticks out. And even if it's under my hair and you can't see it, it feels weird. And if I know it's there, I won't want to wear it. And I know from the first attempt at knitting that blocking, I think I did block it, or I don't know. Yeah, I think I did because I can see it smoother. I know that blocking is not going to change anything or much about that. So, you know, I thought about like maybe sewing under the neckband, but that's just like, that would look weird. I don't want to do it. So again, this is destined for the frog pile. The reason I like kept these all knitted was every time I started a new project, I would just pick up another ball of yarn, figuring when I run out of what I've got, I'll just, you know, knit from the existing project. I won't bother to rip it out yet. So that was failure number 2. And again, I don't think that was a problem with the pattern because there are several of those finished projects on Ravelry and they all look really good. I think it was a yarn choice issue again. Maybe my row gauge is significantly different from hers. I don't remember. The stitch gauge was right on. But I think, again, because it's a cotton linen blend, this doesn't really have the elasticity or bounce that wool would. And I'm knitting it like at a gauge that it wants to be at. It's not a loose gauge. And so there was just like no way for it to kind of relax into shape, if that makes sense. I could be wrong about that, but that's my suspicion. Anyway, not gonna work. So then for the third attempt, I thought, okay, third time's it. Like if this doesn't work, I'm gonna throw this yarn into the sun. And I will pick a basic pattern without any too much going on at the neck, without any fancy stitch pattern, and how can that fail? So I started East End, which is, it's got kind of a big neckline, but it's just like a simple V-neck top by Alicia Plummer. Pretty straightforward pattern. Is top down. You go back and forth till you join at the bottom of the V. And I wasn't having any issues with the pattern. I think the yarn was working okay, but I kind of lost steam, before I even got to the part where you would divide for the sleeves. And I think my issue here is that it's just too blah. It's too blah for me, even for me. And I dress pretty, you can tell I dress pretty. Is conservatively the right word? Like I don't need to have like a lot of flashy statement pieces. I like having a lot of basic, easy wearable, don't stick out in the crowd too much kind of things. But this was even a little too much basic for me. And I think it's just because it's a very simple design and the yarn is a very plain color. I mean, it's gray. Why I picked this color, I don't really know for sure. I got it a few years ago. But plain top, plain color, they're just like, it was just a little too boring, honestly. So I'm actually, despite all that, I'm not done with the yarn yet. I actually do enjoy knitting with it. I mean, I've knit probably the equivalent of a whole sweater, or at least a whole t-shirt out of the 3 of these combined. And I know my gauge, that's pretty solid because I've got 3 enormous swatches here. And despite the fact that there's no wool content in this yarn, it's cotton and linen, so it's not elastic. I mean, you know, you'd think it would be really hard on my hands, but it's actually not. I actually enjoy the tactile experience of knitting it. So I want to give it one more shot. And I think what I will do is find a cardigan pattern in the gauge that I'm getting, which is 6 stitches to the inch, and make a real simple cardigan that I can wear in warm weather because it's not going to be very warm. I'm thinking about the Rayuna cardigan. I can't remember the designer, but I'll make sure it's in the description box and on the bottom of the screen here, because I think it's top down. It's pretty straightforward. I think there's a little bit of ribbing detail maybe on the side, but nothing too fancy that will mess with my row gauge, and then I can wear it over something a little more colorful or interesting. And I think that will, hopefully that will be the Goldilocks sweater for me. I've had more attempts with this yarn than Goldilocks did with the porridge. So that's 3 projects all in the same yarn that I need to rip out. The other 2 I've talked about probably more recently. Let's start with this little pink one. So I think I already shared about this and why I'm going to rip it, but I'll just give you a recap. So I am the fortunate auntie to 2 little girls, my brother's daughters. He lives with his family in Virginia, so several states away. I don't get to see them very much, but I love to knit for them. And at least so far, they love to knit the things that I make, or they love to wear the things that I make for them. It's very, very sweet. So my youngest niece is 7, like 7.5. She's in 2nd grade. And my older niece is 9. She's in 4th grade. And for right now, the younger niece loves the color pink. The brighter the pink, the better. And I bought this yarn, which is, it's a little washed out just because of the light. It's after 5. It's, you know, we're starting to get that evening glow. But it's a pretty bright pink, like a bubblegum Barbie pink. And it's Mojave yarn, which is Kelbourne Woolens cotton linen blend. More of a light sport weight, or a fingering weight even. I like it knit at a sport weight gauge. So yeah, you can see it. It's a much smoother yarn than the Zooey I was working with, but similar fiber content. So what I really wanted to do was make the Raindrops Tee by Tin Can Knits, and I like it because it has this series of yarn overs that sort of get more spaced out the further you get down on the yoke. So all the increases for the yoke are achieved by these yarn overs, which I think is pretty cool. The problem with the Raindrops pattern as is that there is no shaping for the neck, and the neckline is huge. You can even see it on the pattern, the official pattern photos. It just looks like it's big and slipping around, which to me looks very uncomfortable, especially for a kid who's moving all the time. Like my younger niece especially is just one of those really active kids who's just always moving, and I can't imagine she would be comfortable in a sweater that's with a neckline that's large and slipping around. So I combined the Raindrops pattern with the simple sweater, which is from the Tin Can Knits Basics collection. Great collection. They have basic patterns for socks, hat, a couple of different sweaters in a lot of gauges and every size from baby to like a 70-inch chest or something. So it really is all the basics. So I started with a stitch count for the neck of that pattern in her size, did some short rows and increases, and then moved on to when I got to the stitch count I needed for Raindrops, then I moved to the Raindrops pattern. And like, I don't know, man, I had to do the yoke twice because it was huge in the yarn over section. I think using a cotton linen, again, an inelastic yarn with the size needle I was using, it worked for the stockinette, but it was way too loose for the yarn over section. So I ripped it out and did it in a smaller needle. That was better. But it just, something's not right. I just don't think she would wear it. I can't totally put my finger on why, but I just have this gut feeling that it's just not quite right. And if I've had that gut feeling every time I pick it up, that's a sign that I need to just call it. So I'm gonna rip this out. I just haven't done it yet. You can still see I still have sleeve stitches on here. We'll see. I think the proportions maybe look a little funny. I don't know. It just isn't right. So that's for that. That's it for that one. And then for my older niece, I was working on, like, look, I am mid-row on this. I put it down mid-row for some reason. And that was like 3 months ago. I'm not exaggerating. Maybe longer. Yeah. So this is, if I can get things untangled enough to show you. One of the reasons I haven't ripped yet is because I'm going to have a tangle yarn to deal with, and I just have to be ready to do that. I should put on like I should binge a show or find a nice long movie or something, or a podcast to listen to, or an audiobook. I don't ever listen to audiobooks. Do you listen to audiobooks? Every once in a blue moon I will. Okay, so you can see the front here. This is the Islay cardigan by Gudrun Johnston. She has a version for children and adult sizes. It's a beautiful pattern. I mean, the thing that stands out is this pattern that goes up the neck, up the front. Really cool. And this took a couple of tries to get right, because when I followed her instructions exactly, again with me and row gauge, I think this is often a problem for me. It's been pretty consistent through this whole set of projects I'm showing you. My row gauge is just different when I'm working with plant-based fibers. Who knows why? But anyway, when I followed the pattern exactly and like started this pattern and started the armhole at the points where she says to in the design, I was ending up with a ginormous armhole. Like it would have been like halfway down her rib cage. It wouldn't have looked right at all. So I had to rip back, start this part earlier so that the armhole would be an appropriate size. That was all much better. But I started this months ago, like maybe in June, I don't remember for sure. And last night, or the night before, I picked it up and I thought, you know, my older niece is 9 years old and she's a tall kid. And like, I just have a feeling this is at least a size too small for her. So I pulled up a note on my phone where I had made notes of measurements for sweaters that I made them last Christmas. So this is 10 months ago now. And sure enough, this is measuring smaller than the sweater I made for her last year. So I think the chances are pretty good that this is not going to fit her. Sure, it might fit her little sister, but this is a color she likes. My older niece really loves teal and aqua. And, you know, I want to make things that they will like and wear. So I don't know yet if I will just remake the Islay sweater in her size or if I will just find something else. We'll see. Sometimes, like, even if it's not anything wrong with the designer or the pattern, if it's not working for me, like sometimes I'm just kind of ready to be done with it. Sometimes I'm willing to persevere, you know, but I'm not sure. So to wrap it up, so first of all, maybe one of the lessons here is that I shouldn't be knitting with cotton linen yarn because it just seems not to work out very often. but you know, it's so soft and it's so comfortable, and for kids it seems so nice, especially when they live in the Southeast. So one thing I did before realizing that those were a complete fail is I went back to the Salsier, which is my favorite local yarn shop near me, and I bought more Mojave in different colors because it comes in so many beautiful bright colors. It's 60% cotton, 40% linen. I mean, don't these look like summer? They look like summer. I don't know. They're just so bright and cheerful. What are these called? This one's called Coral. This one's called Pickle. It's kind of a light green. This one is called Dandelion, and this is white. They just call it white. Where does it say? I can't tell. But I love how these look, and I thought that like striped, if I made like striped tees with all of them, or like with their favorite colors as sort of the main color, I thought that would be really, really fun. So what I would probably do is use the Tin Can Knits basic summer sweater, because I know my gauge with this, and just add all those fun striped colors in the body and the sleeves of the sweater. And I will have plenty to do that because each of these skeins is a couple hundred yards, 185 yards, and you know, just for a few stripes it won't take that much. So that's what I might do. So I need to go now. I have dinner to make, and I have some frogging to do, but I will see you next time. Please take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.